I definitely would echo some of the comments on why we're organic and biodynamic. It's really, it's driven not only by a sense of that's what's really the right thing to do for the land here and taking care of the land, but it's also driven a lot by quality, and we honestly feel by farming organically and biodynamically, we're truly getting superior fruit. We're getting better terroir expression. We're getting flavors, aromas and flavors, and phenolic maturity at lower sugar, more balanced potential alcohol, and the rigor of being biodynamic and some of the limitations. Biodynamics, if we want that certification on the bottle of wine, there's very tight limits on what we're allowed to do when the fruit comes to the winery. So there's both a viticultural growing aspect, and then there's a winemaking aspect. We have very tight limits on acidulation. We have very few things we can add in terms of fining agents to correct imbalances. We have very tight limits on what we're allowed to add to adjust the sugar, if the sugar's too high. So, when we try to live within those parameters on the bulk of our wines, it really forces us to be out in the vineyard more. Whether you like it or not, it forces us into a very high level of rigor in the vineyard, where we're in the vineyard a lot, we're very engaged, we're catching stuff early, and I think that's the case whether you're organic or biodynamic. We can't rely on the latest, high-tech spray to really save ourselves at the end. I think this area is a fantastic place to be organic and biodynamic. The humidity, the temperatures, very Mediterranean climate, the relatively low humidity. I spent a lot of time prior to Quivira in the Russian River and Sonoma Coast, and I saw many people over the last 10 to 12 years try to be organic and biodynamic out there. Some succeeded, and some had pretty epic challenges and have essentially given up, even though in most years they'll try to farm that way when they can, but if it means farm that way and lose the crop, or not farm that way, they'll adjust to at least have an economically viable crop. Whereas we're really blessed in this area to be a fantastic place for organic biodynamic viticulture as well as agriculture in general. Part of biodynamics, biodynamics as opposed to organics, there's I would think a very strong emphasis, a heightened emphasis on biodiversity and sustainability. And so, to be a self-contained ecosystem, we need the chickens, we need the cows, the pigs, these other crops. The materials from those and some of the waste products are recycled into our compost program, into overall estate fertility, and we couldn't really be, we really couldn't have the estate certified biodynamic and the vineyard certified biodynamic without access to those materials. We make our own compost. We compost teas. Almost all of our preparations are now made in-house, and so if we were simply a straight monoculture here, we wouldn't be able to do that. And so when you embrace biodynamics for whatever reasons you personally do, you move into this other world where you really should figure out how to have animals on your property. You really should figure out how to grow other things besides just one crop. And I think you see that not only here, but at other biodynamic vineyards and practitioners in other areas. So I think the difference between organic and biodynamics is I think we share a lot in common. I think biodynamics has this heightened emphasis on the biodiversity and the sort of self-sustainability within your estate. But I think it's pretty much a who's who in the world of fine wine these days who's either organic or biodynamic. I mean, I can't think of a top Burgundian, Rhone, Loire Valley producer, increasingly even New World producers that are not organic or biodynamic in one form or another. So I think it's also, sort of ruthlessly driven by the quality of the material we get coming into the winery that we feel is really giving us better raw material to make great wine and express the uniqueness of our vineyards. So, question?
I do. I'm just wondering, what do you think it adds to the cost of producing wine to embrace organic?
You know, the increase in cost, I don't have an exact number off the top of my head, but there's a transitional period when you're going to organic and biodynamic, when you have, you know, your vineyard ecology is more based around a sort of regular spray program and Roundup for weed control. You know, there is a period of time when you're establishing the ecology in your vineyard, and your costs do spike for a couple years.
Yeah.
But then in what I've seen, and I don't know if you've seen this, but you know, you see that spike for maybe 3 years or so, but then the costs actually come down, and it is a little more than farming conventionally, but not a lot. It's not as much as people think. At least that's been my experience in a couple of locations. But it is slightly more expensive, yes.
Hugh, you work with a lot of diverse varietals here too, and is there one or two in particular that are fairly difficult? I mean, with mildew and things that are a little bit more challenging, you as the winemaker slash farmer guy?
Yeah, I mean,
what it takes to work with these grapes?
I mean, this year is going to be a challenge, I would say, a big challenge on Sauv Blanc and Zin. You know, Sauv Blanc is just a low crop. There's a lot of millerandage, or the hens and chicks in the clusters, so that bodes for a challenging scenario with phenolic and skin tannin maturity. You know, normally a lot of us might crush and destem our Sauv Blanc to get a little character out of the skins. It might be a year where we do a little more whole cluster because the skin tannins aren't as mature, because you know, there's just this difference in berry size. Same thing on some of our Zin vineyards as well. You know, having come from the Pinot realm prior to Quivira, you know, everyone says, you know, Pinot, the heartbreak grape, and all that, but I think a lot of the challenge with Pinot is finding the right spot to even plant it to begin with. And once you do that, and you do, you know, really, you know, ultra premium, top-notch viticulture, I think, you know, Pinot to me isn't as hard in a year in, year out basis as Zin. You know, Zin as a varietal is uneven. A ripe cluster of Zin has, you know, pink berries, perfectly ripe berries, raisins in it. What's the best ratio of those each year? Plus it's thin skin, and you can get interior rot if it's a high, you know, a higher soil moisture year. To me, actually, Zinfandel viticulturally is extremely challenging. A little more forgiving in the winery than Pinot, but I would say to actually grow it and nail that pick decision, I think Zin's hugely, and it's going to be a tough year for Zin, I would say. I don't know if you agree, but yeah.